The day began like any other in the early hours of a frosty morning. But before the sun could climb above the horizon, alarms screamed through the quiet of Western Russia, deep beneath layers of reinforced steel. Inside the Western Military Command bunker, red lights flashed as encrypted transmissions poured in. Operators struggled to keep pace with the flood of data, troop movements, satellite feeds, radar anomalies, all painting the same terrifying picture. A coordinated assault unfolding across multiple border zones. At 06:12 Moscow time, surveillance drones detected armored formations, advancing through the Kaliningrad region, their insignias hidden, their tactics unnervingly precise. Within minutes, missile sirens wailed over Smolensk, where explosions tore through communication nodes and fuel depots. The network went dark. Chaos rippled outward. Commanders barked orders into dead radios as their screens flickered and froze under an electronic storm. It wasn't just a military attack, it was a technological ambush. Inside the Kremlin, the Security Council gathered in emergency session. General Viktor Sokolov stood rigid at the end of the table, jaw tight, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "This is not a border violation," he growled. "This is a deliberate offensive, coordinated, timed, and German signatures are all over it." The atmosphere was electric with disbelief and anger. Ministers argued over responses, diplomacy or escalation, while President Morozov listened in silence, his fingers drumming the table's edge. An aide rushed in, clutching a tablet. "Sir, new satellite data, multiple incursions confirmed. Not just in Kaliningrad. Pskov, Bryansk, and even near Kursk." The room fell into stunned silence. "That's impossible," whispered the foreign minister. But the data didn't lie. Dots spread like blood across the digital map, red for Russian positions, flashing yellow for enemy advances. Morozov rose slowly, his expression unreadable. "Prepare all strategic assets," he ordered, his voice calm yet cold. "But do not engage unless fired upon. We need to know who's really behind this." Outside the night sky over Western, Russia glowed faintly orange as distant fires burned on the horizon. Civilians were waking to news broadcasts, warning of border instability, though no one yet dared call it war. Still, the soldiers on the ground already knew. The line had been crossed, and there would be no going back. The breaking point had come, and the world was about to change forever. In Berlin, the atmosphere was tense but outwardly controlled. Television networks broadcast live images from the Bundestag, where the German Chancellor stood beneath the bright lights. Her expression poised, her tone measured. "Europe cannot stand idle when chaos unfolds at its doorstep," she declared firmly, her words echoing through the hall. "Our mission is to protect peace, to prevent destabilization, and to ensure that no single power can threaten our collective security again." Applause rose from part of the assembly, but not all were convinced. Opposition leaders demanded clarity. What did defensive deployment truly mean? Were German troops already moving across borders? The Chancellor gave no direct answer. Behind her confident rhetoric, the truth was far more complex and far more dangerous. Hours earlier, in an underground operations center outside Berlin, German and NATO commanders had finalized Operation Sentinel. Under this plan, joint European task forces would move swiftly into regions bordering Western Russia, ostensibly to secure strategic energy corridors and stabilize conflict zones. In practice, it meant seizing control of key infrastructure points before Russia could react: gas pipelines, railway junctions, and satellite relay hubs. The orders were executed within minutes of the Chancellor's speech. As night fell, convoys of Leopard tanks and armored vehicles rolled east under the NATO flag. Helicopters hovered low over frozen fields, their rotors slicing through the mist as soldiers adjusted night vision, goggles and loaded ammunition. Official press releases described the movement as routine exercises, but social media painted a different story. Videos surfaced showing German troops crossing checkpoints into contested zones. In the Situation Room beneath the Chancellery, Defense Minister Anke Keller studied a wall of monitors showing live satellite feeds. "They're already moving faster than expected," she said quietly. The Chancellor nodded, her eyes fixed on the eastern horizon, displayed on the digital map. "Good. The window for control is closing. We act now, or we lose Europe's stability for decades." But not everyone in the room shared her confidence. A senior intelligence officer leaned closer and whispered, "Ma'am, there are risks we haven't calculated. If Moscow sees this as aggression—" She interrupted sharply. "They already do. Now let's make sure they're too late to stop it." Outside, snow began to fall over Berlin, soft, silent, and deceptive as Europe unknowingly slid one step closer to a wider war. The night descended over northern Russia like a heavy curtain of steel. The once clear winter sky turned electric with interference, streaks of static and flickering trails of drones, moving in silent formations. By midnight, entire regions had gone dark. Power grids collapsed one by one. Communication satellites lost signal, and radar screens across command centers filled with meaningless noise. It was as if an invisible hand had gripped the entire northern front and squeezed. At the Northern Defense Command near St. Petersburg, Colonel Alexei Zaitsev stood before a massive tactical screen that looked like a storm of red dots. Each red marker represented a lost connection. Battalions cut off. Convoys stranded, field units out of contact. "We've lost Pskov's entire 5th Mechanized Division." A young officer stammered, his voice trembling. "Their last transmission was—" Static, then nothing. Zaitsev rubbed his eyes, exhaustion etched deep into his face. "And Bryansk?" he asked. "Gone dark 2 hours ago," the officer replied. The colonel slammed his hand on the console. "They're not attacking our men. They're severing our lifelines." Beyond the base, the wind howled across frozen forests and empty highways littered with burned-out vehicles. Civilians fled their villages, clutching small bags of possessions as air raid sirens wailed in the distance. Overhead, enemy drones hovered like silent predators, their red lights blinking through the snow. Every few minutes, a dull explosion echoed. Another communications tower destroyed, another bridge in flames. In the bunker's dim light, technicians frantically tried to restore satellite links. But every attempt was jammed. The interference wasn't random, it was surgical. Someone knew exactly which frequencies Russia relied on, which nodes controlled fuel logistics, and which relays powered the military grid. A faint hum rose from deep beneath the base, the backup generator switching on. "Colonel, we've established a low-frequency channel with Moscow," a technician shouted. Zaitsev grabbed the receiver. "Command, this is Zaitsev. We're losing control of the northern sector. Repeat, the front is collapsing. Request immediate authorization for Omega activation." For a few seconds, only static replied. Then a calm, distant voice spoke. "Authorization granted." "Hold the line." Zaitsev closed his eyes. "Hold the line," he repeated softly, though he knew there was little left to hold. Outside St. Petersburg's skyline glimmered faintly through the snowfall, unaware that it stood on the edge of a new kind of war. At dawn, the first light broke through the grey clouds hanging over Europe, but instead of peace, it revealed a continent teetering on the edge of catastrophe. The previous night's silence had been deceptive. In Moscow, while German and NATO forces fortified their new positions, a different kind of operation had begun, one that required no tanks, no missiles and no troops on the ground. In a windowless basement, beneath Moscow's Cyber Defense Directorate, dozens of specialists worked in total darkness except for the glow of their monitors. Lines of code streamed faster than thought itself, commands launching into the global network like invisible missiles. Their targets, power grids, communication satellites, and data centers across northern Europe. At exactly 0547, the first blackout reports came in from Hamburg, then from Hanover, Bremen, and finally Berlin. In the German capital, chaos erupted. Trains stopped mid-track, airports went silent, and emergency systems failed. The Chancellor, preparing to issue another national address, suddenly found her studio plunged into darkness. Cameras went dead, the feed cut off, and the city sank into eerie silence. Outside, traffic lights flickered uselessly as crowds filled the streets, their phones displaying only blank screens. Back in Moscow, General Sokolov received the latest update. Operation Mirror is complete, the cyber chief reported. NATO's satellite relays are offline. Their command channels are blind. A cold satisfaction filled the room. Now, Sokolov said, let's see how they react when the lights go out. But the situation soon spiraled beyond everyone's expectations. Within hours, Berlin transmitted a coded message requesting an immediate ceasefire. Intelligence reports revealed something astonishing. Parts of the offensive had not been fully authorized by Berlin at all. Rogue NATO field commanders, acting under misinterpreted emergency clauses, had launched preemptive operations without full political approval. The Chancellor was reportedly furious, her calls to Washington unanswered as communications remained unstable. Across Europe, fear spread faster than any virus. Stock markets froze, air traffic halted, and social media exploded with rumors of nuclear readiness on both sides. Yet amid the chaos, the first faint signal of restraint appeared. Moscow paused its retaliation. Berlin ordered a withdrawal of forward units. As the morning sun rose over a continent scarred by confusion, one truth became painfully clear. The wars of the future would not begin with gunfire, but with silence, the silence of systems going dark one by one.